One again. And we're live with Scott and Dakota, the filmmakers, the writer and the director, the two leads of Anchorage, an indie darling that we're so privileged and happy to have at Pandance. To those of you who will be trickling in, Anchorage is playing tonight at Pandance, making its Canadian premiere. Definitely check that out at 9 o'clock. Scott and Dakota will be on again for the Q&A afterwards. But here, they're not here for a Q&A. They're here to lead a workshop. And can we give them a sneak peek of what's coming? What's coming to this workshop?
Thought you never asked, yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Beautiful.
I love this. Absolutely. Like, it's so cool. It warms my heart so much. And our former workshop coordinator is going to love this when she sees it too. We love, one of the main things that when you reached out to us and said you wanted to do something like this, immediately thought, who better to empower emerging filmmakers than you two?
Too sweet, yeah.
Of course.
We just are so happy to be included in the programming with Pandance, so thank you so much. Mutual Appreciation Club here.
Yeah, big time.
So let's talk about this film. But before we talk about it, let's show everybody what we're working with here. Let's check this trailer out.
All right, let's go. Flee. Flee. Flee, fly. Free fly. Flee, fly, flow. A flee, fly, flow. I'm a llama, kuma llama, I'm a llama vista. I'm a llama, kuma llama, I'm a llama vista. Oh, no, 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 not the vista. Oh, no, 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 not the vista. Eeny, meeny, yesta, meeny, you what you wanna meeny. Eeny, meeny, yesta, meeny, you what you wanna meeny. Acha, meeny, you what you wanna meeny, wah. Acha, meeny, you what you wanna meeny, wah. Beating belly, oatin', dotin', bobos, get got bobos, squat, dot, bot, dot, chow.
Explosion.
What could go wrong,
What could go wrong? It sounds like a pretty fun comedy you got going on. So the romantic comedy. Is it romantic comedy? That's the vibe I got. First of all, we already got our first compliment here, Mandeep, who's an actor. Who's attended Pandance for some years. We remember you, of course. Nice poster, Scott and Dakota. Thank you so much, Mandeep.
Thanks,
Okay, so let's get into this film. How you pulled it off. First, a little overview for the audience. 5 days. If you're a filmmaker out there, and a lot of our audience are, you know that pulling off a feature in 25 days is a nightmare. It's hard. Okay, there's a lot that goes into it. So, as one of my mentors says, Mark Razzo, when you're going to make a film like this, it's pre-production. Not pre-production. It's pre-production. So let's talk about this process of how you pulled this off. I personally, not gassing you guys, I think this film's a miracle. It's not just how you made it. If you told me you made this film in 25 days, I'd be just as impressed. But the fact that you made it in 5 warrants some thought, some thinking here. So let's get on with it. And thanks. Welcome to Pandance.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. So as he said, I'm Scott Monahan. I'm the director of Anchorage.
I'm Dakota Loesch. I'm the screenwriter of Anchorage.
I play the character Jacob.
I play the character John.
Yeah, when we were talking about doing this panel, we had a couple of ideas, and when this name "Rebels for the Cause" was something that kind of spoke to us as well, because we weren't necessarily going out to try to prove anyone wrong or make a film, and we didn't start with the idea of making a film in 5 days. I think the hashtag of your festival, story over everything, is so important.
Yeah.
That's where we come from, an immersive, and we wanted to bring what we had learned from that devised process, and that process of deconstructing a script and starting from nothing, starting with character and movement, and then bringing that into making a movie.
And having story as the lead, like the character in front of your nose, that's what led to all other decisions. And because we're the director, the writer, the main actors, executive producer, co-produced by, we're wearing a lot of hats, but all those decisions can be made to help the project from the very earliest point of it, earliest idea.
And so we met, Dakota and I met in when we're saying immersive theater. If you're not sure what that is, it's when you take the seats away and the stage is kind of something that you can walk through and be immersed inside of. So we met on this show, Why I Want to Fuck Ronald Reagan, which led us to meeting my friend Stephen Fine was directing a movie that Dakota was cast in, and we worked together. And this is like, you know, be inspired by other filmmakers around you, ask them how they did what they did, learn from them. And so we were on set for this movie out back of this bar that we were shooting at.
Rest in peace, Smog Cutter. We miss you.
Yeah. And we were like, oh, this is what an indie film set looks like. We could do this. We could make our own movie.
Yeah, let's keep the fun going. We were so inspired by Stephen, what he was doing and pulling off and what we were involved with. It's like, let's keep this fun going. Let's apply what we've learned and immersive to the movie making process.
And since we're both actors, we had my scene in this movie with Dakota is only maybe a minute long.
It's a fun minute though.
Yeah, it's a fun minute. But we were like, let's make a movie where we get to really showcase everything that we can do. And who's going to do that better? Who's going to cast us in a movie? You know, they say, the Duplass brothers say, don't wait for the cavalry. The cavalry isn't coming, you know? And so you have to go out and make your own work and make something that appeals to you and that you're connected to.
Absolutely.
And then we also did this show, Everyone Agrees, which is another immersive. So
That's the most recent one we did, yeah.
We've done 5 shows together.
Over 5 years, yeah.
And something when you're making a film, connection and chemistry of your characters is really important. We were very lucky to have 5 shows worth of devising under our belts that we had a shorthand with each other, and not only what we like to do in theater, but what type of movies we like, what type of art we like, and also how to work with each other as actors.
Yeah, we talked about that as much, if not more, than the movie. At a certain point when we're first starting out, we were always talking about how do we want to work, how do we want to bring people on, how do we want to apply these ideas to this medium. And so that was the earliest talks was what do we want to do? And part of it was give each other carte blanche as creators in the acting realm, you know what I mean? And I think that extended to everyone on the cast and crew too. Everyone had really nice.
So what is this movie about? So the movie is about 2 brothers, Jacob and John, that are driving a trunk full of opioids from Florida to Alaska to cash it big in the land of gold.
And a split-second act of violence somewhere in the California desert derails that trip and sets them on a crash course of tragedy.
And so we'll get into here's what we're going to be basically talking about.
Yeah.
And our steps for our process for this was first and foremost, develop our story. Why are we telling this story? Why is this important to us? Not all movies have to be some social justice issue or it doesn't even necessarily have to be personal to you, but what it should be is something that feels like you have to be the one to tell this story. Because if you're just making something, you could be making a movie just to entertain people, like a comedy or something like that, but find that core in it of why it means something to you and why it has to be you that tells that story. And
see, there's story over everything. It's the top of the list.
Yeah. And then we got into writing our script, our pre-production for the movie, the filming of it, post-production, film festivals, and marketing. Mm-hmm. So we're going to try to, get through all the stuff.
Yeah, tell you what we did, and then give you ideas maybe how you could apply it to your own things. This isn't the only way to do it; it's how we went about it. You know?
And so when we got into developing our story, this is a Pinterest pin page. I'd read somewhere that it was really important to just get a lot of imagery in your head about what are things that remind you of your film? What are things just start consuming all kinds of art and not just other films, because you don't want to just go out and replicate films that remind you. I didn't go out and study Good Time and Safdie brother films and Harmony Korine and say, I want to make that. I want to steal that shot. What we did is we looked into imagery, historical references, parables, books, go to a museum, see oh, that kind of reminds me. And when you start building this thing, it creates this beautiful pastiche of all of these different things that then start creating your movie in a very unique space. Because I was at the Jim Thorpe Independent Film Festival a couple years ago, and this guy was doing this Q&A and says, the one thing that you cannot be taught is your aesthetic and your taste.
There's no accounting for taste.
And so develop that, because that's only going to make you a deeper and stronger and more nuanced filmmaker that has your own personal style and aesthetic.
You can draw from so many references, we drew from plays and records and stuff too. But even we started with a lot of these symbols, the idea of symbology, and also because a bit of our story is rooted in classical storytelling and older tales, So it's what are our symbols? What are our sigils? And early on, some of these things, the necklaces, the color of the hair, were things we began to dream about as much as we were talking about. You know, what if it's waiting for Godot with a junk problem? You know, it's waiting for Godot. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and we just come up with ideas like that. What if it's bad will hunting? You know what I mean? So just little concepts, little poems, little stories, anything. You're making a Venn diagram of your interests and seeing what sticks in the middle there.
It's something that's really good about using something. And it doesn't have to be like our movie has kind of like a little bit of a religious over/undertone to it. But it doesn't have to be that. There are ancient stories. We as storytellers are retelling essentially the same stories over and over again in different kind of ways through different contexts and mediums. And so when you pull from something, you can apply something about either biblical or political to a movie that isn't about that. It could be a comedy, but it could be about a coup. And like, how can that character reflect a certain person in that? And when you do that, it gives you this wealth of stuff to pull from that doesn't have to be exclusively from your imagination and experience, because then you're able to pull in those things that mimic or adapt to that same kind of source material.
Yeah. Like, where between the movie Heat and Bert and Ernie do we exist, you know?
So the script writing process for us was really fun. And the way when we work in immersive theater, we start with character, we start with a story, we start with how you move, how you talk, how you interact. And then we get into what we call like content generation, where we're generating scenes. And at the end of the devising process of one of these shows, we'll have like maybe 100 scenes with all of the different actors. And then we'll whittle those down into figuring out where they go and how they work.
Yeah. And the writing came in like stages throughout the entire process, even up to the last, last day of shooting. Like early on, we would come up with scenes. There's a whole list here of possible scenes we could do. And we just like planned what those could be. Then we got together with Meredith Trinan, our associate director, and we did some like body and movement based things to generate the characters. And then we would riff through those scenes as characters. I'd like be court stenographer because we'd record the audio, court stenographer, put it in order, come back, do it again, riff through it again. And we would only get to a certain point because we want, you know, we have a 45-page script for an 82-page movie. So we were riffing about half of it, but that's not exactly accurate because we would have the in and outs of every scene. And then there was even a scene at the end where something happened. I won't give nothing away, but me and Meredith were writing in the follow car up until the last shot to like, in part to surprise Scott and to just continue this scene, this thing we had found on the day. So it was a continuation of writing with everybody involved. Aaron Nafee, our cinematographer, had great ideas for scenes that made it into the movie. Like a throwaway comment would become a scene and we would know the characters so we could riff through it.
And part of that is for me, for being a first-time feature filmmaker and having a team with me I just wanted to surround myself by the most talented people I knew. And if I believe in their talent and I'm bringing them onto this production and they're spending their time and energy, they, at the very base, at the very minimal, deserve the utmost respect.
Yeah.
And then from that, respect doesn't just mean I am nice to you, I am kind to you. It also means I respect your opinion and ideas. And you would think that maybe in a 5-day shoot that, you know, you could say, I don't have time. We don't have time for ideas, you know, and there is time for the collaboration. There's time when there's not.
Yeah.
But you should listen to that thing, because filmmaking is a collaborative process. This movie is not, there's a reason why there's credits in every movie.
Yeah, actually, our version of story over everything was we would say best idea wins. And I think it's the same core principles, the same spirit to core of like best idea wins. The story is the guiding principle, you know?
You gotta really release that ego. One of my favorite words that I think that the most empowering words is I don't know.
Yeah. And
for people to hear you say that on set, when they ask you something and you don't know, that opens up the door to, well, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Because I think that sometimes, and I've experienced this with working with people in my past, is that the fear of people knowing that you don't know makes you feel like you're not equipped to do the job.
Yeah.
Whereas that vulnerability of opening that up to people allows them to see that you are looking for, you know, like, I think it's just very powerful and empowering to your crew and to yourself to be able to admit that and then find that answer while you're out there.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we talked about, sorry to cut you out there. We talked about this beforehand, about how we felt like before you even made this film that we were connected somehow.
Yeah.
Just the ethos of it. And it's interesting that you mentioned this, finding the most talented people you know. one of the things I've found a lot of people is that when they're unsure, what they make sure is that nobody around them is sure either.
Mm-hmm.
They want people that won't threaten their authority. They don't want to work with people who will challenge their authority because everyone's just afraid of not knowing. And when you say, I don't know, because there's a baked-in expectation that as a director, you're supposed to know everything. And
Right.
the best directors never do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and are open to ideas too, and know how to filter those too. You know what I mean? It's not just try everything. It's like you know how to filter it, and you're kind of the zenith for it.
And so in this script, something that I think in this page, this little like list here we have of these different things. They go swimming. They do all this kind of stuff.
Fireworks, masks.
Yeah,
none of it would really made it.
Like piss and shit is on there, and I think no. I think
Keeping it real, you know.
Yeah, like we had an intention with this movie that we wanted to feel real. You'll see in the movie that when they like pee out on the side of the road. Jacob blows a snot rocket when he's hungover.
I
Like,
love the sound of the snot.
those kind of things are like we wanted this film to be as grounded in reality as much as it was in the dream world.
Yeah.
And by having this list of things that your characters could do, that's not necessarily written into scenes in the script. If you have some time, you're doing a thing like, oh, let's pop that in, because when you get into the editing process, regardless of what you wrote or regardless of what you thought your movie was about, it's a whole different thing.
Absolutely.
And it's nice to have some stuff. So if you have some time, think about some other things that would be nice to see in your.
You'll always have the memory of that as creator too. So it'll inform the story. It'll inform the characters, even if you don't use those scenes.
And so for our pre-production, which was a lot of this, what we've talked about already with our script process and the developing of these characters and figuring that out, we had, I'd driven down from the 395, which is in California, the desert side near Death Valley, from coming down from Yosemite to Los Angeles a bunch of times, and had seen all these kind of like defunct locations. And that's just one of those things of like Guillermo del Toro says, you should never be bored as a director, right? You should always be absorbing things. And so I was absorbing these locations before we even went out and saw them. And then when we came up with this story, I was like, I know the perfect place to go where there might be some stuff.
Yeah.
So we looked for a bunch of locations.
Yeah. Well, first we went on a location scout, just me and Scott, so he could show me the area. We scouted out like 30 different places on that route.
And the ones that we found just so happened to be chronological, going kind of back in time.
Mm-hmm.
And since our story has a biblical, parabolic kind of like source material, you'll see the far shot at the end is one of the later shots in the movie versus this graffiti and the Air Force space that's before.
Yeah.
And so we went here the first time, just the two of us, to find the location. And when we found these locations, we found it was chronological. That was the first time we were like, you know what? We can shoot this chronologically. That's going to save us time by not having to
producer hat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Go back to each location, wait for time of day to change. And
it also worked, again, story over everything. It worked that you were going back in time. So it worked for the producers, us, it worked for the writers and director, us, you know what I mean? So that decision early on impacted the whole thing.
And for our process of devising as we went along, because if there was anything we found on the first couple of days, we were able to use that in the following days without having to say, oh man, I wish they had told this joke on day one, because then we could have used it on day 3. Now we got to find a way to edit into that.
And whole cast and crew's on the same page, and that's why those great ideas are coming. We're stealing dialogue from Jetty, who's our location sound guy. Like, true, we're trying it out. I don't know.
And then so the second time we went back to location scouting, we brought our production designer, who's also a photographer, and we came back a little bit more in character. So Dakota had his hair bleached, mine was colored as well. We had some of the semblances of these characters that we were building in costuming.
Yeah, the symbols like the baseball bat.
And we did
the grill. Yeah.
We did a photo shoot for putting together a pitch deck. Now our pitch deck, my sister she's a director and a producer, and she teaches class on making pitch decks and stuff like that.
Jamie.
And so what I had learned from that was that, we'd always wanted to make this ourselves. We didn't want to shop this off to anybody else. But in the meantime, making that pitch deck helped us to understand our project better.
Yeah.
How to condense exactly what it was we were doing and why we felt it was important. And also this pitch deck was what enabled us to bring on our crew as well, because I would be able to send them something that was representative of what it would look like. And now I just want to preface by saying that not everybody has the benefit that we did of having the actors from day one.
Yeah, this is unique to our project.
And so we were very lucky to have those actors involved in every step of the process. But, you know, if somebody had offered this idea to me and said, I'm going to be working on this for a couple years and it's a good project and the actor feels like they have some kind of involvement in the creation of it,
yeah,
you could probably bring them along, you know, for this, you know, depending on your process. But so this really helped us to figure out, oh, what are these characters like? How does it look on camera? And it was,
and we even had some scene ideas on the way up. And then while we were there, we came up with new ideas.
Yeah.
We scouted specifics of locations we'd only seen from the road, you know?
and then so our third location scouting was with our cinematographer. So this is December 5th. You can see the date on there, 2019. And so that we were shooting January 5th, like literally a month away. So we took her to the same locations. We figured out some blocking for some of the scenes of what would be interesting from her point of view. We used the Sun Finder app to know where the sun was going to be for certain shots.
Because we used natural light mostly.
Yeah, and so that was going to help us figure out where we could be in each day. And that would help us to figure out how much time we had for each scene so we could put together our shot list.
Yeah, and something unique we did is, you know, there's 2.5 days of movie time, but we shot over 5 days. So on an early day, we should start in the morning till early afternoon, day one. Day two, we'd start early afternoon until late afternoon, and then that would become 1 day in the film, you know, and keep our chronology and always be shooting in sunlight. So again, these little decisions early on, as producer, writer, director, actors, exec producer, those decisions are going to impact the whole thing, and they allow for the timeliness, no cost for the lights. You know what I mean? Like these little decisions.
And it's something that, you know, this isn't a plug and play for all projects, because, you know, some scripts require things to not be shot in a chronological fashion. Sometimes you only have actors that are available on certain days, or a location that you only have for certain days. But I think that it's really important. Of what we were trying to do was find out cost efficiency in general, and then also what is best for the story, and how can we deconstruct that filmmaking process of saying it's got to be done this way, this way, and this way. You have to have this many people on set. You have to do this before that. You can never do this. And just taking those nevers and always out and saying, well, what's the best for this specific project?
Absolutely.
What would be the best for this crew?
Yeah.
What is the best scenario to put our actors in to feel like they have the ability and the space to be creative, present in the moment, and be supported by the cast and crew?
And what assets do you have that are unique to you? Not just story that you know you have to tell, but what do you have at your disposal? Like we had, that we were, the two of us were all those department heads. So that made all these decisions easy. What do you have that you can apply to your story that no one else has, that's an asset to you, you know? And it is a lot of pulling favors and beg borrowing, and everything's short of stealing, you know?
I have a friend, his name is Pete O's, and he just has a movie that just got into South by. It's called Jessica. And it is, the budget was like, I think like $6,000 or something like that. And it's, he was able to be the cinematographer, he edits, he does the sound, and that's an ability that he has. When he covers all those departments, he's able to take the actors and make something really powerful, and that's one of his strengths. And he's done it very successfully. So find your strength and what that is and what your lane is.
We love you, Pete.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that, you know, is rare for indie directors out there is finding an actor, who can connect to your script.
Yeah.
So in a way, you're talking about your friend having this, you know, unique ability to be able to wear 3-4 different department hats. I think compliment also goes your way, right? Being able to cast yourselves into a story that you so inherently understand, and eliminating the middleman.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And also, when it comes to, I mean, you know, directing a movie, creating movies and stuff like that, it is, you're creating a version of life, right? And, you know, I remember there was some acting book I read when I was really young, and I think it was Stella Adler talking about how nobody could act before 18 because what have they experienced in life? I disagree with that. That's not true. But I think that you have to live a full life. And if all of your friends, if you're an actor and all of your friends are actors, or if you're a sound guy and all of your friends are just sound guys, where's that collaboration going to come into? It's important to, like, in your life, genuine connections outside of networking is like have people support other people's work. that's how you like make genuine connections. If you have like an issue with the idea of networking, is like go see other people's films, reach them out, support them, tell them that, you know, like those kind of things of making genuine connections and showing up for other people, being on other people's sets, meeting other actors, going to see an art show and meeting people. That's how you're gonna have a fuller, richer life and be able to like pull from that. And not to say that you always have to hire your friends, but I think it's helpful to surround yourself with other artists besides the specific art that you do, because it's going to inspire you.
And like the life experience, regardless of what happens with the movie, you're going to have the life experience. Everyone on that project will always remember that life experience. So why not? It could be it could be productive and focused, but it could be a place people want to be a part of, you know?
I'm kind of curious because, you know, the way that you both celebrate, you know, we've known each other for about a month roughly. So throughout the course of the month, we've followed each other on Instagram. We've seen how you're supporting other filmmakers at these other festivals, how you're supporting filmmakers at Pendance in a way that I have, in my opinion, never seen anyone do in my life. I've never seen a filmmaker put so much emotion and so much energy into supporting and championing other people's work. Now, I will say that I've seen schmoozers in my life. Not a fan. I'm not a fan of calculated people in a sense. And, you know, this doesn't feel calculated to me at all. It feels like a genuine thirst, a genuine curiosity. So I guess I'm asking, where does that come from? How early can you recall having that? Not to turn this into a Q&A, but, you know, definitely just curious.
For so long. That's why we're so excited to finally be here. Why wouldn't we go to every screening and try to meet every filmmaker? And, you know,
I mean, we support our friends and work and people that we meet. And I just think it's like, I think that social media for me was kind of maybe where it really like started taking off in a way where I was like, I mean, I don't have a ton of followers, you know, but when I see something, I realize that what if this platform wasn't just about me? What if I was able to use this every once in a while to shout out other people's work? Even if that person's never going to see it, even if Baz Luhrmann is never going to see me post about his movie, maybe somebody else will, and they'll go to see the movie because of my post. And like, when we went to Oldenburg, I had been posting about all these other features that we were in competition with, and this filmmaker, Patricia Plonik, she's an incredible Polish filmmaker, and she was like, I've never seen anybody do this before, to post other features that you're in competition with. And I was like, again, I'm happy to be here, but also like, sure, there's a competition, there's awards and all those kind of things. But the most important thing is like this film festivals for me was the first time I felt community as an actor in my life. Not my life, but like, it's such an individual process. Yeah. It's such like, I go to the auditions, I book the role. It's not like I'm bringing people in. And when I saw an opportunity for community and what film festivals is given, especially ones like Pendance, Oldenburg, Stony Brook, all these film festivals, American Film Festival. I mean, we went to the American Film Festival in Poland and made 10 friends that all live like within 5 miles from us in Los Angeles.
Yeah. And all the kids there, I felt like I was back in Chicago, honestly. We were partying with them every night at the bar, you know?
And so I think it really comes down to like, you know, and I want to collaborate with these people as well. I would love to work with them someday. I want to support their work. I would love to.
This project is that. I would love to work with you someday. This is literally one of those. We met in theater together, ended up making a feature film, and now we're traveling the world with it with our friends and our collaborators. You know?
So that's how when we were assembling our crew, that's what it was. For me, it was like, this is my first feature. I would love to surround myself by people that are working on their first features potentially. And there's some people here that have done more than that, but our composer, it was her first feature, our cinematographer, her first feature. And
first feature-length script I ever had actually come to fruition, you know what I mean?
And for our sound guy, there was an interesting thing where I reached out to him, found him on Facebook through a group, and we met for coffee and had like a hour-long like meeting. And he was like, because I'm vibe checking somebody that's going to be on the road with me, and most of these people were my friends.
Jammed in a car for a couple days.
Yeah, and it's a rough and tumble movie, so I needed to find somebody that could hang. But what he told me, which I thought was important, was that nobody's ever done this for me before. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, nobody's asked me to meet for a coffee before working on this script. I was like, well, what do they say? And he's like, they asked me what my rate is, if I can be cheaper, and if I'm available these dates. And then I show up and that's it. And I just thought, like, man, I went to the library when I decided I was going to direct this movie, pulled out like a directing 101 book, and I just flipped through to this page that was about assembling your crew. And they talked about building a crew based on who was going to work well together. Not just who is the most talented, but whose energies are going to match, how are they going to complement each other. And so that was in the ethos of this, and also bringing people together that had worked in immersive theater, because we were trying to bring that aspect into our film.
Wait, let's shout out the crew real quick. We got Ethan Seneker and Gia Rajoli. They're a producing team right there.
From the left.
Yeah, sorry, I'm backwards. And then then we got Michael Duman, who was our first AC. We have Aaron Nafee, who was our cinematographer. That's Scott, who was the director, also played the character Jacob, executive producer. Then we got Jetty Shiheng Zhu, who was our location sound. There's Perry Powell, our production designer. And then that smaller photo, that's me, that's Scott and me, and Aaron and Mike and Perry and Meredith, our associate director.
And the funny thing about this photo, I was looking at it, I was like, oh yeah, we shot this during the pandemic, but we didn't. We actually shot it in January, and those guys are wearing masks because
dusty.
that house has some like old, archaic,
ancient
filth.
Yeah.
All right.
Here's our 3 cars we had,
So the filming, we filmed this movie with our car, the picture car, which I bought. So to rent a picture car can be anywhere from $350 to $400 a day. I figured, what if we got our own car, and because we were going to burn cigarette holes in it and kind of smoke inside of it. And so I found this car for $1,500. So that was a way of like, well, how can I take this thing, my lack, which is like a huge budget, and say, I don't have $500 for 5 days times the insurance and not being able to smoke in it, story over everything. So what's more important? Let me see if I can buy a car. Found a car that was blue, and kind of like, that was kind of the color we were leaning to for Jacob, and it just like fell into place. And I also got it from a filmmaker whose work we like share and talk to each other all the time. And so we had that picture car, and then we had 2 follow cars, one of which was following behind our car, pulling focus with a wireless focus puller. And then the other one was kind of backup and
follow car, and like some, crafty and stuff, because we were on the move a lot of the time,
So we had 3 cars. The picture car can't store anything, and then the other 2 cars have people in them. So I mean, it was a very everything was very packed, if you can think. But since a lot of what we were doing filmmaking was guerrilla style filmmaking,
punk rock,
we needed to have a light footprint. So there was a possible idea of us coming out with a G&E truck and like having all this lighting things and stuff like that. But then we would have been 4 cars, a big caravan, and clearly a film production. And so having this kind of way of going under the radar a little bit more with just a couple SUVs and the picture car was a way that we could, keep a small footprint and not make as big of a noise.
And be quick too.
This is our cinematographer. Big shout out to the camera rental department that Erin has been working as a first AC in Hollywood for about 10 years. If you look her up, she worked on Hereditary. She's the best, and she used some of her connections. Thank you.
Thank you, BD.
She used her connections to get us a really good rate
from the camera division.
For the lenses. We shot it on
S4s.
Yeah, the primes, and we shot on an Aria Mira. We had, which
is a honker. Look at this thing,
We had 2 lighting setups that we needed lighting for in the movie. We had like a LED panel and just kind of a traditional thing on stands for like a moonlight in one scene.
Otherwise, it was bounce board and natural.
Mm-hmm. And when we were shooting this, there was a point where Erin had asked if we could bring on a gaffer, and I told her that we didn't really have the money for it. Now, in this scenario, I just want to express to you that when we were making this movie, everybody was getting paid, and nobody was being overworked. We weren't shooting 18-hour days.
We never went over 12.
We're shooting 10-hour days, because you have to really if people are coming out and coming on board for your process, it's a passion project for you, and they are coming on because they are passionate about your project.
To work on it, and it's work for
them. Now, that does not mean that okay, I don't have enough money, so I can't afford to pay you. Well, if you can't afford to pay them, then you need to figure out another way to do it. And so when it came to her asking about a gaffer, and we had known that we were doing natural lighting for most of it, I said, is this something that you and Mike could handle, and I could get you extra hands-on from one of our our production coordinator or from somebody else on set, and she said it was. But that if she had said it wasn't, I would have found a way to pay that person that she needed.
Yeah.
And that's important when you're working. That comes into the respect of your crews. You don't want to overwork people, because I want to work with these people again.
Yeah.
And also, they are humans. Okay, like treat other people as you would want to be treated. You know,
Golden rule. Yeah, there you go.
if someone hires me for a 10-hour day and works me for 20 and pays me for 10, I mean, you know, I probably won't work with that person again.
Yeah.
And so this is, again, there's our 3
Little
cars
small footprint.
in the desert. We have,
Little punk rock traveling circus.
do you know how many people are in this thing right now?
What?
8, 9.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, so we have about the amount of people that are in on this thing right now was our cast and crew for the movie.
So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
So let's all make a movie, guys.
Hey, come on, stop recording.
All right. So when we came back from the desert after shooting this 5 days, Dakota and I felt like we robbed a bank. It's like we got it all. Nobody hates each other.
Yeah.
The footage is incredible. All the hard drives, no cameras damaged.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
We came back with better stuff than we even anticipated. New surprises.
Yeah.
Story wise, again, story over everything.
Sabrina and y'all.
Hey, Sabrina Brush, what's up, my dear friend?
Oh,
Mwah.
hello. Love
I miss
from
ya.
Nashville.
Hi, I love you guys. I miss you. I love that photo of the motorcycles, huh?
The second I said 8, it jumped. So
Oh,
maybe
really?
we just keep like
Yeah,
fast.
what's up in the world?
We're gonna get to questions later, but yeah, super nice to see. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So for post-production, we wrapped in January and we jumped right into that show. Everyone agrees it's about to explode. Like literally the next 2 days after we got back, we were in the final stages of preparing for that show.
Yeah.
So that's in February leading up to March. March, the pandemic hit. But before that, in the month of February, we had decided, so basically with our budget, this is what we did. We did 3 different versions in the beginning, which was the smallest budget we possibly have, a middle range budget if we could get some more, and a bigger budget. And we just put in some kind of loose numbers of like figuring out what that would look like. Once we landed on the smallest budget, just by nature of all things, we applied for grants. We applied to, there's a first-time filmmakers grant. There's like all these different grants you can reach out to.
Didn't get none of them.
Didn't get any of them. But each one of those grants that we wrote helped us better to define what it was that the story we were trying to tell.
We're like polishing the copy, getting the poetry of it good, knowing how to like give the copy out to anyone who asks us at the drop of a hat or a little elevator pitch.
And so when it came to post-production, we basically kind of just picked we didn't randomly pick a number, but just assessed how much things would cost and came up to about $20,000. Now, that if we had hit 20,000, that would have covered all of our festival submission fees.
Yeah.
But we hit 16, and then for Seed and Spark, you have to hit 80% in order to keep your money. We hit that, and then the pandemic hit. And so the last 4 days of our fundraising, which normally would have been like
the hard push
was not, because we didn't feel like asking for any more money at that time. Yeah. And so with that 16, we made that work, and we just got right into post-production. That we'll talk about right now.
Yeah, here we go.
So for score, a podcast I can't recommend anymore is the A24 podcast. I didn't go to film school, and there's nothing better than listening to the greats of filmmaking talk about their filmmaking style. I learned a lot from Mika Levi and 106 Point Never. They have a podcast on scoring, which is really great. And we just kind of always talked in the beginning that we didn't want it to be overlaid with music. We didn't want music to always guide exactly how you're supposed to feel.
Yeah,
and
it could be a conversation with what was happening, a juxtaposition, and not a Mickey Mouse. Like, Tom and Jerry go up the stairs, we go down the stairs. We didn't want to do that.
And so we had a friend of mine who I met when I first moved out to LA in 2011. I always knew she was a musician. I'd always been supporting her stuff and like watching her journey. And
also
I saw
involved in immersive theater too. Has done some scores for immersive theater.
Yeah, and she was working in composing, so I pitched her the idea of working with us, and we had this incredible experience where she wrote 3 pieces of original score, and we did a Source Connect with two brothers that lived in Germany at the time. And during the pandemic, masks on, we went to the house and were able to create and work with this, this score. And the music that she created is.
So we were hearing live from Dusseldorf, them playing the cello and viola, or cello and violin, as she was conducting and making little adjustments, and we could hear it coming live over the feed. Really cool part of the process. Thank you, Savannah Wheeler.
And you'll see in the movie, the dream sequences are also something that we worked on with her as well.
As you go back in time, the score becomes a little more dominant.
And then coloring, I know a lot of filmmakers do this themselves, and I think that's awesome. But there is something, and this is what I'll say about this as far as why I wanted to raise money for post-production. I have a lot of friends that do stuff and might have worked for me at, like, I don't know, you know, but there was something for me about bringing people on that were professionals at what they do. And meeting, I reached out to a friend of mine, a lot of friends of mine, about some colorists. I was like, do you know any colorists? And every guy that I would hit up would say, I know this guy Chad, or there's this great guy Brad, or there's this dude Kevin, or there's this guy Brock. And I was like, do you know any female colorists? And they'd be like, let me get back to you. And it took some time. And so when I hit up my buddy, he had given me like 10 names for somebody else. And then he was like, you know, there's this girl that we worked with. Her name is Caitlin Bottistelli. She's incredible. And when I hit her up and looked at her page, I found out that she had done all the color correction and continues to do all the color correction for Moses Sumney's work. Mm-hmm. And Moses Sumney has a song in our movie, and it just kind of lined up in this really cool way.
Kismet, you know, that cosmic serendipity.
And the process of color grading was really important for our film, because one of our producers, Taylor Harrington, told me that color was the thing that makes the movie look like a movie if it's done really well. And she really knocked it out of the park. And, you know, my emphasis before that was like sound, and maybe also color. But going into this studio and seeing this, her work in the way she did, it really taught us a lot about the whole color process.
Yeah, and she even like helped us play with ideas. Like, you know, I guess it's common on films to do something called a beauty pass, where you kind of soften it like 5% on the density or the intensity. And we were like, could we do an ugly pass? So it's like more zits, you know, like
let's see the dirt.
And she's like, well, let's play with it, you know. And she was down. She knew how to communicate all that into the technicalities of it, and it was just so great to work with, just like Savannah and this whole post team, you know.
Yeah, 15. All right, so our post-production, we worked with Sean of True Peak, and this was, again, all of this post-production was done during the pandemic. So we fundraised until March, lockdown happened, and we had from March until August to finish the film. So each part of the process got about a month. Someone that's not on here because I didn't have any photos of them is our editor, Spencer Showalter. Editing is such a crucial part of the movie. We took it to a rough kind of assembly cut, and then
between me and Scott,
handed it off to him and said, take it for 2 weeks, do whatever you want with it. I don't even want to talk. Let's just do your own, like, let's see what you come up with. And he blew us away.
Elevated it to a whole different place.
And it was taking that and then fine tuning where we meet in the middle.
Moving pieces and seeing how you could affect time.
He's also, our editor is a musician as well. And one of the early passes of our film, we were getting notes about tempo and pacing. And so I wanted to bring in an editor that had musical quality.
Sense of
and he's the one that the first song in the movie and the other two songs that are in the film, Drink and Shine, just those two were choices by him. Yeah. So the music supervision is kind of something that was spread between me, Dakota, and him.
Yeah. And we had written sound notes and music ideas into the script from the earliest ideas. Like, we had some things we knew should be integral to it.
So in post-production, we worked with my friend Sean Yee of True Peak Soundworks.
Excellent team. This
is also a guy that had just started his company relatively recently, and it was a fun opportunity for some of the people like Bree Chanikar and Zach Shreves to have like their first time like working with people on a feature film. And that sound design process is like it was a lot of fun, and it's a lot of time that we spent during a pandemic where we were able to still like work on something, and it really gave us a lot of like, I don't know, like a sense of purpose during that whole thing.
Absolutely.
And just, you know, each one of those things is not something that, like, it's really, attention to detail is so important. Let me just go back to the slide really quick.
Yeah.
It is so important to every pass that they get you. When if you're sending it to somebody, if you're not in the room, listen to every moment. Put some headphones on, because there's going to be, everybody makes errors. I make mistakes. People could make mistakes. You just want to make sure that every single thing is done, because that attention to detail in your process, it can be very easy to get a little burnt out when you're a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years into making your project, that you're like, oh my God, let's just get this thing off.
Yeah. And there's just differences in taste. It's not always mistakes. It's just like differences in aesthetic. And again, story over everything. It's like, what's the story's aesthetic? We kept finding that in post. The story would tell us what it wanted from sound, what it wanted from color, what it wanted, sort of following the story again.
Okay. So briefly, so for film festivals, I'd never been to one before. Like I'd been to one. I'd been to the Jim Thorpe Film Festival, and the AFI Film Festival, because it was free. But I'd never been with a project, and I just didn't know what they were. Everyone, I knew Sundance, I knew Tribeca, I knew these like big ones. The information is out there on Film Freeway. You can also look at reviews, which is really important to me. How do the filmmakers feel? Yeah. Are there any negative reviews? Are those negative reviews outweighed by positive, or vice versa?
Reach out to filmmakers who've done the thing before, just like we did with Sabrina Doyle.
Check into their programming in the past couple years. See if there's anything that's like your movie that's been programmed before. Do they program gritty, raw movies? No, probably not the festival for you.
If you got a gritty, raw movie.
Yeah. There's so many niche markets, especially for genre and different things, but we got really lucky. We submitted to a lot of festivals. We got a lot of no's from a lot of big ones when the pandemic was virtual only. And we were pretty confident on the fact that we wanted to start in person, and whenever that would be. And that was at Stony Brook. And we went from New York to Germany to San Diego to Poland to Italy to Mammoth to Mississippi, and now here
we are in Canada.
And I think we submitted to, and it costs a lot of money, just letting you know that ahead of time. It's like $4,000, I think, for 76 submissions on Film Freeway, on top of what it costs to submit to the ones that are not on there.
Yeah, whatever you're budgeting for post, double it. You know what I mean? Just double it. You'll thank yourself later.
Or go to film festivals, go to panels, make connections to people that run festivals, genuine connections.
Yeah.
And when you have work, reach out to them and ask what they might think is a good festival for your work.
That's how we got the Pendants. We recommended it, from our friend Sabrina. And it's like, good people know good people out there.
Yeah. If anybody wants our festival submission list, you can just reach out to Robert, and we can just send you where we submitted.
Yeah.
You can look on our Instagram to see what festivals we've been to, but
keep track of us. We got a lot more coming.
And there's some of them, there's Google Doc for which ones will cover travel and lodging, because that's another thing that can be expensive,
Heck yeah.
Because once you've spent all this money on your film, if it's your money that you spent, you might not have the money to fly to somewhere. But we were very lucky that Stony Brook and Oldenburg and Poland all covered our flight and transportation, which took a huge weight off our shoulders.
It's made it possible.
Yeah, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to be there, boots on the ground with the film.
It looks like we got 5 minutes left. Should we go to questions and stuff?
I just want to briefly,
we got to shout out Jens Wagner, our artist.
So we found a guy through I did a targeted ad on Facebook with our trailer to every city that our festival submitted to, targeting to specifically people that look at films and stuff like that. And that's how I met my friend Jens Wagner. And he makes, he's an incredible graphic designer. And he came on board, sent him the screener to the movie, and he's been creating content for us since, because we had been very social media to me is very important. It's a way to connect with people. It's a way to connect with film festivals. It's a way to connect with programmers and other filmmakers. It's cheaper than a website. Everybody has one. You can be creative with your content. It's easy to promote your posts. Organic engagement is the thing that takes work to actually build an amount of followers. I mean, we've only got 1,060, but for a movie, that's pretty good.
A little indie that could.
And it's a one sheet for your film. The one thing I want to say about the social media is that sometimes, if I looked at certain,
thanks, man, love you. That's my mom. She's a voice actor that appears in the film.
Yeah, she's a voice on the radio. But the one sheet, this is what people are going to look at when they see your movie. So you want it to look and feel like your movie. If it's just behind the scenes photos and it's just red carpet this, or really think about that aesthetic, because this does make a difference. And as you see here, I make a highlight reel for each festival that I go to. so that you can click through. And if anybody comes to our film page, they're like, oh, what is Pin Dance? And then they see all of our posts and content from Pin Dance. And they're like, that looks like a cool festival.
Check it out.
So it's like supporting them, supporting us. And it's also just the easiest and most free way to get organic engagement. So
get on socials.
Get on social media.
Story over everything. Best idea wins.
Yeah. And like when we saw this, and we were talking about this before we went live, story over everything is like that. When we saw that, it's like, that's how we feel. And we also said like performance as well. Like that is really important to make sure that is, because that's what we're capturing here, right?
Yeah.
Everybody can do a beautiful shot of not everybody, but I just mean like, it can't just be shots.
Yeah, it's got to be story.
You're capturing humans.
Yeah.
You know, you have to
It's
make
the
sure
connection.
Storytelling is one of the most ancient things of humanity. It's how language and stories were developed. And yeah, so thank you for that speed through. Wow.
That was fun. What did we learn?
We learned that we don't have a lot of time for we learned that we don't have a lot of time for questions, but we also learned that we are very fortunate that you'll both be back with us 10:30 tonight.
Yeah.
Right. 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. So anyone who has questions for Scott and Dakota, they'll be able to answer them after the screening. And hopefully now that you've watched a little bit of this, and we're going to stitch this we're going to put this up on Eventive very soon so that people might be able to check it out and browse around. Maybe it'll be a little bit of a plug to go watch the film as well. And hopefully, I think watching this before watching the film, that'll give people a lot of maybe better questions. One thing I will say, just, as a festival programmer, if there's another festival programmer out there who is watching this and, I relate to you. I understand that there's always a trepidation of bringing on features that, you haven't heard of the producer, you haven't selected the filmmaker before. There's always that new thing of, well, where did this film come from? Did they clear all the rights? Will they show up and trash our entire festival? Will they go on stage and yell racist stuff? There's a lot of fear. And I think certain festivals do get too big to fail at some point where the risk outweighs the reward and that's why I think, festivals like the Austin Film Festival, Slam Dance, a lot of festivals that really do take a chance and do program for story. I think we cherish those festivals and we aim to be that type of festival, and we'll get there someday for sure. Yeah. But if there are any programmers out there, I want to extend the gratitude that's being extended, because last year, Maggie Briggs, if you're watching this, hey Maggie, said this really lovely thing about Pin Dance, and a lot of people have referenced that. So I'm going to extend that nice thing that you did for Pin Dance. I'm going to extend it to Scott and Dakota and say, if there's a programmer out there watching, thinking, is Anchorage for my festival? You're going to find two of the loveliest human beings to bring into your program. You're going to find people. You're going to find two human beings who are passionate about their story and the stories of all your filmmakers. They're going to make all of your other filmmakers feel so amped about the festival. They're going to be timely with all of their communication. They're going to get you all their materials. They're going to do awesome things like this workshop on the fly because you asked them to, even though they both have this crazy work schedule and they're pulling off like 75 jobs to make ends meet. So I hope that if you are one of the 27, 28, 29 film festivals watching this Q&A, and I will definitely hammer you to watch this later, give Anchorage a chance. Just check it out, because this is a lovely film. I trust in our programming department. I trust Kayla. I trust myself. I trust our team. We don't program bad films. Yeah, I don't care what you say about Pin Dance. We've never programmed a bad film in our lives, and this is one of our favorites. So check out Anchorage. Give these guys a follow. Check them out tonight. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, we'll
see you in Anchorage.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Love you.
Okay. Okay. See y'all.
See you
in Anchorage tonight.
Anchorage.
We'll see you in Anchorage.